Welcome, another Tuesday here on Sideline Sports. A lot going on. Going to start with Jake and John and what happened last night, which we have a lot to unfold with. So first off, prayers to the Buffalo Bills.
To Damar Hamlin himself, his family, everybody.
Yep.
Yes, everybody involved in the game. It was a tough situation, and when you look at that, I mean, you have to go back. I was watching ESPN today. They showed in '87 the last time an ambulance was brought onto the field, and then talking with people today, there was a death in the NFL in the '50s. Detroit Lions against the Chicago Bears back at the old Tiger Stadium. I forget the names because I'm horrible with names. But we'll get that for you. But and just the stupidity that's coming out of the whole program. I mean, you got people like Skip Bayless that don't know what to keep.
We'll talk about that.
And Bart
Scott, who's blaming T. Higgins for putting his helmet into Damar Hamlin's.
Before we get to that, because I told you guys earlier, I did a little research. For those people that have no idea, like they saw the play but don't physically understand what happened, from my understanding. So if you're somebody who's in the medical field, I apologize that this is going to be in very boring layman's terms, and I'm going to do my best to describe what happened. I'm only going off of what I recall, what I heard, what doctors were saying. Essentially what happened was it was a freak accident. When T. Higgins hit Hamlin, he hit him at the precisely wrong time. When his heart was beating, the blood was trying to come up through into his heart, and the valve that was going to have the blood come through was, I guess, when the heart was hit, instead of expanding like it's supposed to allow the blood to flow through properly, instead, because it was hit and the timing of everything, which again, it's like 1 in a billion chance. I mean, not literally, but it's so hyper specific that at this exact moment, instead of expanding, it contracted, so the blood couldn't properly go through, and obviously he had the issues that we now know. The reason they were administering CPR before they got the AED was that's the best way to extend any chance of survival of any kind, no matter what. So for those that were wondering why were they doing CPR, why were they doing it for so long, it was probably because they had to get an AED wherever the closest one was, but they had to do CPR because if they didn't, this poor young man had no chance of surviving at all. So the CPR was the only chance to even provide any sort of possibility that he would survive. And then obviously the AED to get his heart going. And then before we move on, there's actually good news as of about 45 minutes ago.
That's amazing news.
Yeah, Tom Pelissero retweeted something saying that somebody who spoke with Dorian Glenn is his name. It was
Cameron Wolf, former
yes.
offensive reporter.
So Damar Hamlin's uncle, Dorian Glenn, said to him, his nephew is on a ventilator still, but he's improved to 50% oxygen needed after previously being at the 100% level. So this basically means he's not breathing on his own, but he's certainly breathing more on his own. He's getting more oxygen into his lungs on his own. Look, it doesn't mean that he's going to be fine tomorrow all of a sudden.
No, he's not out of the woods.
It certainly is a good sign that his body and his ability to breathe on his own is at least improving. He's still going to be on a ventilator, obviously, because he can't breathe on his own properly yet. But it's one of those things that you're looking for good news. You're looking for anything positive. This is it. It's almost exactly 24 hours later when the news comes out. It's something. It's not great. I'd like to hear better news that, hey, he's going to be okay. But, I'm sure you two agree. At this point, any news is good news like that.
Anything major like this, any positive is a good thing.
No,
I agree. In one day.
Yeah.
Not all going to happen in a day. It's going to take some time.
So something I found out tonight, reading this stuff that his uncle had said, I don't know if you guys knew this. I just found this out a little bit ago when that news dropped, Jake. He was actually resuscitated twice.
Yeah.
Once on the field and once in the hospital. So he basically essentially died twice. because he died on the
and
field.
His heart stopped twice. Yes.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
So basically, you got to have your heart moving to live. So he essentially died twice. And
again,
bring him back.
It's why I
once
say
on the field,
it's
once in the hospital.
That's why I
which
say
is just. I mean, none of us knew that last night.
No,
and it's just crazy to all these.
Right.
I mean,
stuff comes out.
That's why I say this is good news at this point. You know what?
Yeah.
There's an actual legitimate improvement finally, and it's something to take away.
It's all I was thinking about at work today.
I know.
Just, all my breaks, just
me, you, and everybody
Twitter
in the sports world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, most people in the sports world.
Oh.
We'll get to the others in a couple of minutes.
Jeez.
But, I do have some questions about the whole situation. The ambulance didn't leave the stadium till 9:25. The rumor was they were waiting for his mother. Again, this is all rumors. None of us are there in person in Cincinnati. But my thinking, and again, I'm not an EMT or a doctor, in that situation, why isn't the ambulance leaving right away and giving the mom a police escort to the hospital?
Well, they can't necessarily just get in and leave right away. I mean, there's things that they got to do when they get him in. They're trying to stabilize him, make sure he's okay.
I do think that's part of it.
All of that stuff, they got to make sure he's in a certain.
I do believe part of it has to be that, because I do know from what I heard, I think it was during the broadcast last night, is that they tried to put him on a stretcher and actually put him in the back of the ambulance, but they actually had to bring him back down to perform the CPR.
Was on the field.
But I'm just saying. So my point is, there's a lot of things that had to. They had to be very careful. I think. And I think they just I think part of it might have had to been we need to make sure his heart continues to beat for 5-10 minutes, just anything, or making sure that he's breathing properly, or whatever the little intricacies. I don't know everything, but I'm taking stabs.
I'm not saying that they're wrong.
No, of course.
I'm not here throwing jabs saying they're
wrong.
I'm sure I'd like to know.
I don't know.
What was happening, because
just remember they're working on him in the back of the ambulance too. It's not like he's just sitting there. So they are working on him while he's in the ambulance. They're giving him the treatment that he needs in the ambulance until they can get him to the hospital.
That's not what was reported.
No, I know, but that's what happens in the back of the ambulance is they'll work on him.
I understand.
At least from my experience as being a firefighter for 4 years.
A level 1 trauma center is going to be able to do a lot more work than what you do in the back of an ambulance.
Right.
Waiting for his mom. While it's great to have your family with you, him getting to that level 1 trauma center as quickly as possible. Now, again, I don't know because I wasn't there. These are just questions as I'm watching everything unfold. That I'm saying, what's going on here?
You sit there and wonder, why did it take so long? What was going on?
I mean, they may have had issues in the ambulance, and they may have,
it could be.
Jake said,
I would love
because reporters aren't going to know that stuff.
You know what it could also be? They may have just had to call the hospital and tell them, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we have going on.
Be ready.
While they're getting him stabilized and getting him ready.
Yeah.
Here's what we need you guys to know so you guys can set up properly. I don't. Obviously, I have no idea. I'm just taking guesses here, but it's all possible. But yeah, my guess is it was just a lot of stabilization, trying to make sure that they can put him in the best situation that they can at the moment before they get him to the hospital, before they do all the things that they will do at the hospital.
I would really think that was more of it than waiting for the mom. I truly do.
I think so.
But
I
like clarification on it because I just don't have it. I want to bring in Eric Wilson, who's here.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric.
Fellas.
What's going on?
Oh, it's a new year and we're already knee deep in feelings, emotions, and trying to figure out what's up. So
and I also want to give out a shout out. I mean, Ken Block. I don't know much about racing and all that, but Ken Block passed away last night as well. Apparently, he was a legend.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know anything about him or racing or whatever, but from what I know, he was a legend and he was a great person, and he passed away unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I wanted to shout out that too. There was a lot of unfortunately deaths. These past couple of days. Former Jacksonville Jaguars lineman. Sorry if I forget his name, but he was only 38 years old. He passed away as well. So it's just so many unexpected deaths.
Rough start, a little bit of a rough start to the year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right, JB, you want to talk about people that you want to complain about. So let's start complaining about, because we've talked about what happened. There's going to be a list of complaints about people did or rather should not have done.
There's going to be a list of people that need to shut up. Skip Bayless. You
All
don't
right.
have the right to talk anymore.
Oh, all
You
right.
know,
So
your partner doesn't even show up to the show today because you're an idiot.
I
You know,
agree.
You know,
And
his statement, which I got
yeah,
backhandedly what he was trying to say, could have been said
yeah.
so much better.
And for those who didn't see the tweet, I have it in front of me. Skip said last night about 9:30. He said
Exactly what he said, Jake. You froze as you were telling us what he said because it doesn't matter what he said because he's an idiot.
Eric, you look like you have, something you want to get off your chest.
It's one of those things where I have said on other shows my personal feelings towards Mr. Bayless. And at this particular point in time, I don't feel it relevant to even bring up what he said, even though he did, in fact, put out a tweet later on in the evening and responded. And I'll pick up where Jake left off because and John, my feelings towards him because
Yep.
I made it very clear after the whole Shannon Sharp situation how I felt. So what he said was, no doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of this game, but how? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude is crucial to the regular season outcome, which suddenly seems so irrelevant. He went on to later to say, 34 minutes later, mind you, nothing is more important than that young man's health. That was the point of my last tweet. I'm sorry if that was misunderstood, but his health is all that matters. Again, everything else is irrelevant. I prayed for him and will continue to. So,
Now listen, I dislike the man. I'm not a Skip fan. I kind of got what he was saying. He just didn't think the way he typed it out. If you read it the way I think he meant to read it, he was kind of saying it out loud. If you're the NFL, this is an important game. How do you postpone it? But, it's all irrelevant now. I get what he was trying to say, but he just, because of his previous miscues and who he's become, the way he said it lambasted him, and I don't think he had the right to say it that way.
So do you think it would have been okay if he would have sent that tweet out? Like if he sent that tweet out right now at 8:43 on Tuesday night, I feel like it would have been perceived a lot better because, it's not in the moment of when this just happened. It's not like, hey, it's not Monday night and this just happened and that's all we're thinking about. And we're all still thinking about Hamlin. Don't get me wrong. We're all 100%. That's all we're thinking about. We're not thinking about the Dolphins on Sunday. But I'm saying, if he sent out that tweet today, it wouldn't be as bad.
John,
I'm going to cut you off a quick second. We have a special guest, Dr. Anthony Lemaire, who's a cardiologist, who's going to explain to us a little bit more of what happened with the injury and if he can explain it to us so we can actually understand.
Give him the floor.
Thanks a lot. I'm actually a cardiac surgeon, not a cardiologist, but essentially Mr. Hamlin suffered a cardiac arrest. Now, the actual reason why he had a cardiac arrest is pretty unusual. It's not entirely clear, actually, because he had chest trauma. Now, sometimes if you get chest trauma and it happens the exact wrong moment, unfortunately, you can go to a cardiac arrest, which basically means your heart starts to contract in a way that's not normal. You get an abnormal rhythm. When you have an abnormal rhythm, you're not getting enough blood flow to your brain and other organs. And so I suspect what happened is he had the chest trauma that kind of triggered this irregular rhythm, which is called ventricular fibrillation. That leads to essentially cardiac arrest. You're not getting enough blood flow to the rest of your body. And the way you get out of it, how you snap out of it is, number one, CPR is a way of, by chest compressions, you will improve the blood flow to your brain and other organs. But the best way to get back to a regular rhythm is to defibrillate, basically shock the heart out of this abnormal rhythm. So it's pretty rare, but it does happen. Chest trauma can lead to a cardiac arrest. Now, I don't have access to the records, but if I was guessing, I think that's what happened. He had chest trauma, led to cardiac arrest, and the way he got out of it was with CPR, chest compressions, and ultimately defibrillation.
Now, with something like that happening after the CPR for 9 minutes, is that uncommon or is, that standard?
No, not, I don't remember. Did they say actually it was 9 minutes? I wasn't aware of that, but whatever length it was, in a perfect world, you come right back. like 30 seconds, a minute. The longer it takes you to get back to what we call ROSC or a recoverable rhythm, the longer it takes, the more likely you're going to have some kind of brain trauma. Because the longer you're not getting good blood flow to your brain, you're going to get a stroke. 9 minutes is a long time. So, but the good thing about him is he's so young that he's at a better chance of improving and surviving this. But it's not, I would say that 9 minutes is on the longer spectrum. I just give you an example. If you're doing this for longer than 20, 30 minutes, you're probably not going to survive. And if you do survive, you're going to have some element of brain ischemia. You're not going to be normal, for lack of a better word.
Now,
So,
yeah, Joe.
I'm sorry. So, hearing tonight from his uncle, basically his uncle was talking about how they resuscitated him. They resuscitated him twice, once on the field and once at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
This type of thing, is that normal? Is that
Yeah.
is that a bad sign that they had to not only do it once, which we knew, but then we found out tonight that they had to do it again at the hospital, resuscitate him? Is that can you talk a little bit more about that for us?
Sure.
And kind of
Sure. That I can tell you that's definitely not a good thing. The first time he had it, again, I'm assuming the chest trauma triggered it. When you're during that 9 minutes or whenever it took them to get him back, that period of time where you're not getting good blood flow, the heart is also not happy because it's not getting enough blood flow as well. And with that irregular rhythm, your heart again becomes ischemic, just not getting enough blood flow. That means if he had another arrest, that's another sign that his heart was basically not happy, for lack of a better word, or injured. When a heart goes into an irregular rhythm, it's kind of irritated. It could be irritated by trauma. It could be irritated by ischemia. It's not a good sign that it happened twice. But like I said before, the best thing about him is that he's young and it was witnessed. Just imagine if this happens and there weren't anyone who could do CPR, he probably would be dead by now or so. So it's not a good sign. But the most likely reason for the second time is his heart being irritable because he didn't get enough blood flow. In fact, I would suggest if he wakes up and hopefully can follow commands, I'd be very curious to see what his brain function is, because if his heart was irritable, that means his brain was probably irritable as well, meaning because he didn't get enough blood flow. Believe it or not, your heart can recover easier than your brain. Your brain's is not very forgiving. So I think the second time was because of basically irritation, the heart just not, because it got a lack of blood flow. The first time I'm almost certain was because of chest trauma.
So I have one quick question that I want to ask because, as always, we tend to do our research and try to get some answers as to what this potentially could be. And what I was seeing on social media was people saying that it potentially could be, and I'm probably going to butcher it, so please forgive me, commotio cordis.
I'm not sure.
I'm sure I probably said that wrong.
Cardiomyopathy, maybe?
But what it says is and I'm just reading from basically what I have found. It says if a person is struck in the chest at a specific time in the heart rhythm cycle, the heart's electrical signal can be interrupted, resulting in heart stoppage. This rare cause of the heart suddenly stopping is called what I just said, and I can't. Yes. The blunt force that causes this often comes from a hard object or ball hitting the chest, such as a baseball, softball, hockey puck, but it can come from any type of blow. Now, it says the average victim of this is 14 years old.
Right.
But the symptoms is what made me think and wanted me to ask, is this? It says a person who suffers this will collapse and be unresponsive following a blow to the chest. A pulse will not be felt and the person may not be breathing. Sometimes there will be jerking movements in the arms and legs, but this should not be confused with a seizure. Gasping breaths may also be seen, but this does not mean that the person is breathing normally.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure of that term you're referring to it, but I could say that, like I said, this is not a new phenomenon. We've heard about this before. And the classic situation is, unfortunately, a teenager playing baseball, basketball, football, they get hit in that certain way, and they unfortunately get into a cardiac arrest. Basically, their heart is no longer contracting appropriately. When your heart's not contracting well, you're not going to feel a pulse, and that means you're not getting blood flow throughout your body. And the signs of it would be shortness of breath, the jerking motions that you described, they're not unresponsive. Again, it's primarily because they're not getting blood, their heart's not contracting and not getting blood flow to their brain and the rest of their body. And the only way to get out of it is if someone witnesses it and is smart enough to realize the patient's in arrest, does CPR, and you have to have a defibrillator close by. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for them to make it out or to survive. A lot of these kids, unfortunately, end up dying because people are not aware of this.
Makes sense now why you see all the defibrillators now in schools and different places.
You're absolutely right. That's actually perfectly right. That's why they have these defibrillators all over throughout the hospital, sporting events. Actually, whenever the sports medicine people go with, where I train, I work at Rutgers. Whenever they go to the football games or what have you, they always have defibrillators because of exactly that.
And something like this happened to Chris Pronger a long time ago, and he was able to come back after in 12 weeks actually, and he ended up having a Hall of Fame career. After this same thing happened, and our producer said it's commotio cordis is what it's called, the official term for it.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I actually didn't realize that was the term of that. But I want to emphasize there's no reason he can't survive. Like I said,
right.
9 minutes. I wish it was just a minute. 9 minutes is fairly long time, but it could have been a half an hour. It could have been longer. But again, it was witnessed. And I hope they did effective CPR, because if you do effective CPR, I've gotten people back after an hour. And that was because the CPR was effective. They were pushing on the chest appropriately, so you're getting good blood flow to the brain. The best thing about him, I keep saying, is that he's young. So he should recover. And then, of course, we'll have to see what kind of limitations he's had, but hopefully, he fully recovers and can eventually play again.
Can you talk a little? I'm sorry, JB. Can you talk a little bit about before JB goes? He's already, I guess, his uncle again said that he was at 100% oxygen. He wasn't able to breathe on his own, and now he's at 50%. So obviously, he's able to breathe 50% on his own, 50% through the oxygen. Can you talk a little bit about like how much of an improvement that is and kind of where he's at and you know what I mean?
I got it. I completely got what you're saying. So just so you know, the fact that he's on 50% oxygen versus 100% actually is a good sign, but it's a little bit misleading. He's on a ventilator, and when you're on a ventilator, you start everyone on 100% oxygen. I just operated on someone. They're on 100% oxygen. That's everyone gets started on that. Okay. And then as you keep checking on the patients, if hopefully they're breathing, their lungs are working well enough, they don't require full oxygen. The fact that his lungs are not requiring full oxygen is great. That means his lungs are well. But quite frankly, that means nothing about his brain. That means nothing about his heart. At the end of the day, there's a machine breathing for him. Going from 100% to 50% is good, but it means nothing about his long-term prognosis. So it's kind of like a mixed bag there. It's good. I mean, if he never got lower than 100%, that means he'd be attached to a ventilator for this rest of his life. But by the way, that should never happen. He was breathing on his own before this happened. So you wouldn't anticipate. In fact, honestly, that does not mean that much. And I mean that respectfully to the family.
Right. No, we appreciate, that insight. It's really helpful. Sorry, JB.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. Now, like, he's sedated, and obviously, as John said, he went down to 50% oxygen. Is that standard? After something like this, you would have the patient sedated, and as far as long-term hearing something, it's probably not going to be as quick as everyone would like.
Yeah, actually, you're absolutely right. When someone undergoes CPR and getting shock, for lack of a better word, the first thing you'll do is, after they're intubated and stable, is you'll keep them sedated. You want them to basically recover through what's happening. And then after about 24 hours or so, sometimes a little bit less than that, you'll start weaning the sedation and hopefully waking them up. And that's when you see whether or not they can follow commands. I mean, so that once they come down sedation, they'll ask them to do basic things: wiggle with his toes, squeeze their fingers, stuff like that, open their eyes, just to kind of show that his mind is working. So that's what you expect. And I do not anticipate a quick assessment of, because you're not going to hear, you probably won't hear in 24 hours that he's ready to get extubated or get the breathing tube out. They're going to probably go slow because he just suffered this major trauma. They don't want to go too fast because his body has to recover. So I think over the next couple of days, if he's lucky and wakes up to get the breathing tube, I don't anticipate it being tomorrow.
But you'd say in the next couple of days, we might be able to hear some news like, hey, he's got movement in his extremities. He's awake. He's conscious. He's got some positive signs. We might be able to get some news
But
like
they'll
that
be
in the next
cautious with.
few
Very
days.
cautious.
I agree. You will, because I think after the first, so this happened yesterday. So
Yes,
I would
it's about
expect-
24 hours to the time right now.
I think after 24 hours, that's when they'll start coming down the sedation, because you don't want to go too quick. The most important thing is to stabilize him and then come down to sedation and see what his brain's like. So you don't go too fast after someone suffered a cardiac arrest.
And University of Cincinnati is one of the best in the country, so
absolutely.
they're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Very, very.
Here's to hoping. That's all I can say. Here's to hoping.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions, guys?
No, I think that kind of puts everything in perspective.
I
for
truly
me.
appreciate all of the insight. It's extremely helpful for me and I'm sure our audience. So I just want to thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So,
Take care.
Dr. Lemaire, where can people find you
before
you where can people find you?
I'm at Rutgers in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I'm a heart surgeon there.
Great.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, Dr. Lemaire. We look forward to speaking with you, hopefully, in the future.
All right, no problem. Take care. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. So.
Oh, we lost Jake.
I was like, what did you take me off for? I was like, look, I had some computer issues.
Whoa,
But don't take me off again.
I don't know. I felt like we were like the Brady Bunch moving all around.
That was good insight, though.
That was amazing.
From a cardiac surgeon, kind of like what's going on, because that's way more than we all knew.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
You know, you don't see that from any other places.
It took what I said and it helped add on to what I said, because I gave minimal insight, knowing what I found from people, doctors on the internet telling us, hey, here's what I can tell you. It was good to have somebody there to physically say, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Can you explain to me what's happening?
And
exactly.
So we hear, statements from his uncle and stuff like that. And I appreciate, hearing that stuff. His family's able to speak. I know it's got to be difficult, so having cameras in your face has got to be difficult.
I'm sure.
So when we hear that, we all assume, well, 50%, like he said, is just great. Like we all assume that, but him breaking it down for us kind of gives us the insight that we aren't getting from just looking at Twitter and saying, well,
makes you realize,
hey, I'm making my own assumption based off of that. That kind of insight.
It's good, but don't get too excited about it, because it's somewhat normal. So it's not like, hey, everything is all fine. It's like things are going normally, but let's not get our hopes up yet. Let's just understand this is a normal process, and there's a lot of things that still have yet to be done, which is, I didn't know that. I figured, like, when I read that, I was like, this is a great sign. Things are improving. Now it's like, okay, temper your expectations a little bit. Understand we need some more time to know how this is going to play out, and that's okay. But things are moving in the right direction nonetheless, which is good.
Yeah. So basically, from what I got from it, the next 24 to 48 hours are going to be critical.
Yeah.
They're going to try and take away the sedation.
It'll give us a better picture of what's going on. Yeah.
And see what's going on with his brain, what he's capable of doing, and that's where we'll know the true story.
Yeah.
Of
right.
what's going to happen. Hopefully this young man is okay.
That was the part I was worried about last night. I said in our chat, that was the thing that I was worried about is I hope, that was the thing I was hoping, that it doesn't get to that step, the brain part, because that's what I was thinking about. Not just the breathing, but I was thinking about the brain part, because, you don't, once you go for the brain, like, it's hard to come back from that. So that was what I was thinking last night. And Eric,
Jake, I just think it's kind of very apropos that, the show was going on tonight, and, when you said it's pretty much 24 hours to the minute, I actually looked at my clock and I was like, wow. So this is what a full day feels like.
Yeah.
To go from where we were last night prior to the injury, one full day later, I was like, it really gave me even more perspective on just how simple and how short, or in this case, how long a day can be, because that has been the talk the entire day.
All there is to talk about.
Prayers for Damar Hamlin, and
how is he doing? What's the news? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to point out that JT said we're a medical shootout, Sideline MD.
I don't know about that. We are not. We have guests
I like the
that
ring
can
of
be
that though,
helpful,
Sideline
but-
MD. I like that.
I will have to say it was great though hearing it from a cardiac surgeon, so we
Yeah.
actually understand it because
It's not only just
it's
a
one thing for
doctor;
us.
it's a specialist.
It's one thing for us
Yeah.
to talk about it. We're going to talk. We don't have a clue. We read what's on the news columns and whatever they're getting it. We actually heard
Yeah.
it firsthand from someone who's doing it every day.
Who
Right.
just
And
got
this is
done
their
doing
profession.
it. Who just
Yeah.
got done doing it. He said he has
And-
somebody on oxygen right now. He just got done with. So on 100% oxygen. He literally just got done.
Yeah.
You know what
He
I
was
mean?
just in surgery, he said. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I liked hearing the perspective because again, what I said at the top of the show, sure, it was nice. It was as much information as I could provide to the people, but I can't provide the information that a doctor can. Obviously not. That's why.
It's like
that's
when
why
you
I
try
sit
and
here and
talk
talk about
sports.
sports.
It's like when you try and talk sports with me, Jake. You try, but you can't provide
John,
the information.
John, watch
Wow.
yourself. Yeah, exactly. He
Wow.
better watch himself. Because you know what, gentlemen,
that order?
before we move to anything else, while the three of us are on screen, I just want to say this because I can. All three of us are football fans with teams in the playoffs. And John is backstage with the team that has to play next week and has to fight for a playoff spot. So he can say whatever he wants. But Eric, your Eagles are currently the #1 seed, and we will see you this coming week. And JD, our Giants made the playoffs, man. You know what?
Yes.
From here on out, it's house money as far as I'm concerned. We weren't
I
supposed
have
to be
to
here.
ask Jake. Okay,
Yeah.
so Giants fans were throwing hissy fits. Eli Manning was throwing a hissy fit a couple years ago when the Eagles sat
hold
their
on.
guys.
Yeah,
Eli Manning tweeted that
that was
that
an
you shouldn't
egregious
do
thing
that.
to do. Yes,
How do you feel if the Giants rest their guys and basically give this game away when
I don't think we
Eli
should.
Manning said that
How
Giants
is it
don't
giving
do that?
the game away?
Well, if they rest Barkley
Well,
and Daniel Jones and all their
they won't.
guys,
Time out.
they're handing
Time
the
out.
game away.
This is a big difference. All these teams are in the playoffs already. You're talking about a
That's
team
also
that
fair.
is fighting for a playoff spot. When you're fighting for a playoff spot as opposed to seeding, I don't think it makes a big of a difference.
It makes a
like
difference
resting
because
guys. I don't like guys resting on any case. To me, that's
Agreed.
bogus. But
Agreed.
when it comes to getting in the playoffs or seeding, getting
this
in the
determines
There's a
playoffs
big
is more
difference.
important
the
than seeding.
only buy in the NFC. And if the Giants, who probably would lose anyway, just sit their guys, Eagles are going to wax them and get the first
Okay,
seed. This
John.
determines a lot.
But John, this difference is in the other scenario.
The Giants
keeping
can't
us out.
move. You
No,
do
I
understand
know.
that, right? The Giants can't
understand.
move.
We
And
can't move up or
and
down.
considering the
Listen.
fact, hold on. John, the Giants, listen to me. Shut your lip for 2 minutes and open your ears up. The Giants
wow.
cannot move
Tell him, Eric.
from number 6. Okay? They can't go up to 5. They can't go down to 7. So therefore, if the playoffs, which we know is a whole different animal, okay? If you have the opportunity, and I'm not saying rest him or rest them the entire game, but if your decision-making process is solely based on the fact that you're trying to get a W when honestly it doesn't matter.
Does it matter? Yeah.
Why would you risk an unnecessary? We're talking about an injury here. Why would you risk an unnecessary injury to a player who is one of your premier stars on your team, and you're going to the postseason? You ain't been to the postseason in 6 years. And
Last
now
time he
you
did it
have
was
an
the boat.
opportunity as the New York Giants. You have an opportunity. You know you're going to face either Minnesota, San Francisco, one of those two. Okay?
It's the only teams you can play. Yeah.
That's it. Unless Philly drops.
Which
All right?
I'm not knocking the Eagles. I'm just
Let me
I'm
finish
just,
my conversation before you start opening your mouth. What I'm saying
Wow.
to you is
I'm on your
it's
side.
not
No, you're not.
necessary. It's not necessary for them to play the entire game. Now, listen, Brian Dable has gone out and said he's not resting his starters. So you know
As he
what? If
shouldn't.
that's what he chooses to do, so be it. But based on everything we've seen in the last 24 hours, what is the point of the Giants, with the exception of momentum? What is the point of them playing a meaningless game? As far as I see it, either we're going to win, meaning the Philadelphia Eagles, we're going to have the number 1 seed, or we're going to lose, and depending on how it falls, we'll drop somewhere. But there is nothing right now to me that is more important than the health and safety of the players in the National Football League. And John, I'm going to tell you this as sure as I'm looking you in your face, so you have to know I'm real when I say this to you. The only thing that matters to me right now, aside from priority number 1, which is the health of Damar Hamlin, is making sure that the New York Football Giants get to the second round of the playoffs. Because quite frankly, that's the team I want to play. And that's me being selfish.
I can't blame you.
Okay? I want the New York Football Giants either to upset the San Francisco 49ers, or I want them to trounce Kirk Cousins the hell out of the playoffs. One of the two. All right?
Well, that's because you just want to wax them so you can get to the NFC Championship.
John, you don't.
It doesn't matter if that's what he wants.
As someone who is not in the NFC East, you don't understand.
You know what, Eric? As someone who's not in the playoffs right now, he doesn't understand.
He
doesn't get it.
Look, my point is, before you went and ran your lips, was that the Giants threw a temper tantrum. Their fans and Eli Manning threw a temper tantrum on social media a couple years ago.
And I'll explain the difference.
Now they have a chance to rest their guys. And I just want to know.
Situation.
Okay, so John,
I just want to know if they feel the same way about resting guys.
I'll answer this.
I just want to know if they feel the same way.
John, I'll answer this very simply. In that, let me answer this question, and don't just do me a favor. Just answer the question plainly, okay? In the game a couple years ago, were there any playoff implications in terms of seeding? Not making it, but was anybody were teams already in the playoffs? Was there any effect on that kind of thing? Just yes or no?
That game specifically, that was to get into the playoffs, correct?
That's not what I'm asking. Were teams already in the playoffs and seeded somewhere? Yes or no?
That was a couple years ago. I don't exactly remember how the seeding.
The Eagles were not. The Eagles were not going to make the playoffs, if I remember correctly. Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I do not believe you guys are making the playoffs.
No.
And the only reason they sat them was to screw the Giants out of a playoff spot. It was strictly out of malice, and it was very clear.
They yanked them mid-game.
The difference between that game and this game is that game, one team could make the playoffs, but it was not guaranteed, and so it depended on what would happen. In this game, the Giants are guaranteed to make the playoffs, and the Eagles are also guaranteed to make the playoffs. The Giants seed cannot change, and the Eagles cannot drop anywhere past, I believe, 3 is probably the lowest you guys could go, Eric.
Exactly.
Correct me. I believe 3, right?
3 is the low, because we're not as bad as
Tampa.
So
so the difference, John, in that scenario is, one, the Eagles intentionally lost so they would keep us out of the playoffs because they didn't want us to get in, not because they were evaluating talent. They can give you that mumbo jumbo. You know that's not why they did it. They did it because they didn't want us in the playoffs. And I get it. I didn't like it, but look, the Giants.
It was a Bush League move, but the Giants deserve to be in the playoffs.
The Giants are a rival, so fine. That's what they wanted to do. Whatever. Not here nor there.
We didn't deserve to be in the playoffs that year anyway, but it was a Bush League move.
No, of course. But this game, there are no playoff implications. Why? Both teams already made it. Eric is almost guaranteed his team is almost guaranteed to beat us as is anyway, if I'm just being honest. The Eagles are one of the best teams. So I think the Giants
don't listen to him. Don't listen to him, Jake.
But more importantly, in Eric's case, his Eagles have already guaranteed a spot. So if they sit anybody, I don't really care. They won't because they're fighting for a higher spot. And the Giants, they don't care. It's not like they're going to move up to 5 or they're at 7 and they can move up to 6 and change who they play. They can't change who they play. If anything, I think the Giants might want to do that. Why? Because they might want to play the Minnesota Vikings. And if they let the Eagles win, they guarantee not having to play the Eagles in the first round at the very least. Because if the Eagles lose, they could drop down to the number 2 seed and have to play the Giants first round. Giants, we don't want to do that.
We'd have to drop to 3 to play you guys first round because you guys are 6.
Yeah.
We're 6.
There's 7 teams.
You're right. Okay.
And I don't believe the Eagles can drop to 3.
Even furthering my point, we wouldn't want to play the Eagles first round. We are pretty much guaranteed to play Minnesota or the 49ers.
Which is who we want.
And we want Minnesota. So the Giants,
the team we want.
The Giants in this case, Rest your guys. Who cares?
Just
it doesn't
so we're
affect
clear,
us, and it doesn't affect the other team. I'm not saying they should, but I'm saying, to your point, is there a difference? Absolutely. Do I think they should? No, because I think momentum is a very real thing, and I want my guys to be out there. If you start them in the first half or the first 3 quarters, and then the game is out of hand and you sit them, okay, I'm cool with that. I would be totally okay with that, because at that point, you're playing for nothing. You're already losing by a lot. Don't risk them getting hurt. Totally fine. If it's a close game, I would prefer they don't. I prefer they try to beat them, because come playoff time, if we do play the Eagles in the second round like Eric is hoping, that kind of momentum is a big deal, knowing, hey, we can beat these guys. Very big deal. So do I think the Giants will sit anybody? No. Do I think they should? No.
just so we're clear, if the Eagles somehow lose and the Cowboys somehow win, the Eagles would go to Tampa in the first round, like Tom Brady and the Bucks. It would be the 5th seed. They would go to Tampa and play Tom Brady and the Bucks if they somehow didn't win the division. So
So because first off, Dallas has to beat Washington,
which is going to happen.
Okay.
We saw what happened with Carson Wentz.
I'm gonna let y'all keep going.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, if you lose the division, you'll end up playing the Bucks in the first round. Play Tom
That's
Brady
not happening.
in your revenge game.
It doesn't
What
matter.
they did to you last year.
John, all of this is what ifs.
Dallas going to Tampa is the worst case scenario for Cowboys fans, because they're going to lose to Tom Brady
again,
which is going to,
they're going to lose again, and it's just going to be to Tom Brady now. But John, let me just ask you a quick question. John, who are you playing in the first round? Oh, that's right.
We have
You're not in the
right
playoffs.
where we want you. Currently,
you don't even have your starting quarterback playing this week, because he's got his 3rd concussion of the year. John,
hey, you don't have your quarterback playing this week. Eagles might not have theirs. Things happen,
Wait, Daniel Jones isn't playing this week?
Why isn't Daniel Jones playing?
They're going to rest their guys.
No, they're not. Oh, have you watched Brian Dable coach, John?
Okay. All right, JB, can we move on to more important things, please? Because
all right, so
as
let's get back to the AFC and probably the worst case scenario for the NFL, having this happen on prime time Monday night. So this was the number 2 and number 3 seed playing, and I mean, unfortunately, we're 24 hours after. We all know that obviously we care that Hamlin's okay. That's our biggest thing.
That's number 1 priority, yes.
Yep.
But unfortunately, 24 hours later, we do have to talk about, what does the NFL do?
There's more to
theoretically,
the story, right?
Theoretically, right now, Kansas City loses, on Sunday against the Raiders.
Saturday.
One of these other teams, or Saturday, my bad, that's right. One of these other teams could technically be the number 1 seed. It could be the Bengals, who are 2 games behind right now.
But
if they would have won the game last night.
If they win last night's game and then win next week, you're right.
So what does the NFL do in this situation? And how doesn't the NFL have a contingency plan? And we waited an hour for them to cancel the game last night, to postpone it.
What does the NFL do? I don't know. I think what the NFL does is see what happens this weekend. And I say that because they're not playing them this week anyway. So this week is out of the question. I think they see what happens next week, because if Kansas City wins, all this becomes a moot point as to who gets the 1st seed.
No, it doesn't.
Right. So, but then
John, listen to what I just said. As to who gets the 1st seed, I didn't say
playoff. That's why I said no. It does not. That's why I said you're wrong. Because the Bills have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, Buffalo is the tiebreaker on them, because Buffalo beat them.
If Buffalo would have beat Cincinnati and then they beat the Patriots, they're the number 1 seed.
Again, point being, it matters what happens this weekend. Regardless of the point, ultimately is it depends on who wins this weekend. If the Bills lose, Chiefs win, all of this doesn't matter anymore, because the Bengals, the Bengals would have 13 wins. The Chiefs would have 14 wins. They would be out of it. Again, it all depends on what happens this weekend, which is ultimately the point I'm making. We got to see what happens this weekend. If certain things go where the Chiefs guarantee the 1 spot and the Bills are now fighting for the 2nd spot,
well,
then
it
it matters.
Is there a difference between 2 and 3? Because 2 and 3 is still up for grabs.
It's a home playoff game. That's
so.
But they both have a home playoff game.
No, but I'm saying
they
in the
reach
second
AFC
round.
Championship.
Right. I think what they should do, give it a tie.
It's a tough choice.
Unfortunately, I don't think you can make these guys play, unfortunately. And I think
I don't see how you can't fit it into the schedule.
I think what needs to be done is nobody gets a loss. It's a tie. unfortunate as it is, because you can't put these guys are. I don't know if they're going to be ready to play this weekend. God willing, they will. But I don't know. This is very traumatic. So I don't know when these guys are going to be ready. I hope they play this weekend just for the fan in me. But this is a traumatic experience. I don't know when they'll be ready to play. But more importantly,
so
there isn't a spot for them to play based on the way things are. If they reach the AFC Championship game, what should happen is they play on a neutral site. I know it sucks, but that way nobody gets an advantage because now think about it for a second, JB. If both teams win their last game and it's a tie, technically the Bills now have the 2 seed, even though we don't know what would have happened in this game with the Bengals. It's not necessarily right to say, well, we skipped a really important game and you get to keep your home field. I think a neutral site would ultimately be the most fair. Do I think they'll do that? No. Do I think that's what they should do if they meet in the AFC Championship? Yes. I think that should be the ultimate decision.
Eric, how does this work? Because we haven't even mentioned this. The Ravens are a game and a half back of the division. If this game doesn't get played between the Bengals and Bills, the Bengals automatically win that division because the Ravens can't catch them. If the Bengals would have lost last night, then the Ravens and Bengals square off in Week 18 for the division. Now their game doesn't matter if Week 17's game for the Bengals doesn't happen because they can't catch the Bengals anymore. They're a game and a half back right now, and last night didn't happen yet.
Right.
So what happens? So the Ravens get screwed.
So the NFL hasn't said they're not going to play the game yet. They're just saying it's postponed right now. So if you're the Ravens, you've got to go out and win and hope that
there's nowhere to put it. Eric said it's not fair. There's nowhere to put this.
Well, here's the thing, and I apologize for my lag, but here is something that was a conversation piece that we were all having last night in a lot of the chats. It's not fair to ask these players after what they experienced last night to play Thursday night. However, they're going to play Sunday, whether they want to or not. And our hope is that by Friday, by tomorrow, we have some positive news about Damar Hamlin and that he is on a road to recovery, so that way these players can begin the healing process and getting their minds refocused, if you will. I don't agree with this, but I'm going to throw a scenario out there, okay? And I apologize to the other 2 teams outside of Cincinnati and Buffalo that it affects, and that would be Baltimore and New England. But if you allow the game that did not happen to be played on Thursday or Friday, and then asked the 4 teams that are supposed to play, which means the Patriots, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Bengals, have them play on Monday. I know it's the college football national championship game, but have them play on Monday to at least give them 48 hours to then finish out the season. I think, and college football is going to hate it because they're going to lose ratings, but guess
you could play during the day, right? You could play at like 4 o'clock or something.
You could play a 1 and a 4 on a Monday.
So it doesn't interrupt college,
You could.
Theoretically, yes.
I don't agree with that, but as someone like you 3 gentlemen here on Sideline Sports who has followed the game of football, we know both the fan side, but we also know the business side. Some way, shape, form, or fashion, this game's going to get played.
It has to be, yeah.
It's too much. There's too many different scenarios.
I know.
But where
effects by not playing.
I know.
So the only thing I can think of. This is the only thing I can think of, and this actually it just came to me. So what you can do is you can push the playoffs back, and the reason you could do that is there's a week in between the Super Bowl and the conference championship. Have that conference championship the week before. They can play the Pro Bowl without the teams in the conference championships. That doesn't really matter. You can play your conference championships a week before the Super Bowl. Everything gets pushed back. Play your conference championships then. Super Bowl's the next week. It's not ideal, but that is a free week for you to push everything into that, so that way you could get this game done, so everything can be on track. That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense.
Listen, these are a lot of tough decisions the NFL's got to make. We're just talking about it.
I do not envy Roger Goodell right now.
Forget him. He didn't want to cancel the game, but the coaches and players.
So,
I understand.
I don't think that was him, John.
What you're trying to say?
I got to ask a question here. So Troy Vincent today came out and said he was not behind the 5 minutes to warm up and get back on the field edict that ESPN reported during the telecast. I believe it was Aikman or Buck that said it.
I think it was Buck.
The teams were given they were given 5 minutes to warm up, and this is before Zach Taylor walked over to McDermott and they walked off the field. Troy Vincent said that it wasn't him that made that that rule or announcement to the teams. Where else would Joe Buck get this information?
I can't imagine
someone
where.
Tell me. I mean, wouldn't it be better for him to say that, if I'm Troy Vincent, someone in my office said that and we're going to deal with that immediately, rather than saying I didn't make that statement and I don't know where it came from?
Yeah, I think. There's no way of knowing where he got it from. My guess is Joe Buck got it from a producer, but assumingly Troy Vincent told, or somebody told the producer, hey, this is what's coming out of his office. I think the response was not the right way to do it. I think he should have said, I believe somebody in my office said this. I did not know that was being said. I did not condone that, and we're going to handle that. And I think kind of like what you were alluding to,
that would have been
that's
perfect.
That
would have been perfect.
That's a very simple, effective answer.
The fact that he says he didn't say it, who said it then?
It's like, well, I didn't do it. I'm not the one that's in the wrong. Nobody cares if you're the one in the wrong right now. We just want to, that's not, to me, that's not the response that we're looking for. That's not the answer we're hoping to hear about, It's a cop-out.
What do you think about that?
It's a cop-out.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, I've got to agree with Troy Vincent and say, if he said no one from his staff or organization made the comment or made that decision, then I am going to believe him and take him at face value. Now, I might be wrong.
He said he didn't make the statement. He didn't say anything about his staff.
Okay, so if he said I didn't say it, I believe Troy Vincent.
And that's believable. That's fine. I'm not saying I don't believe him. I just don't think that saying, well, I just didn't say it is in my opinion, at least, the appropriate response. I'm cool with telling us, hey, I didn't say that. That was not my thoughts and comments. I just think, tell the people, like, hey, I didn't, but we're going to find out what happened or anything like that. Right. Because now it puts into question for me as a fan, well, who's making the calls then? Who said what's happening behind the scenes? Because if you're not making the call like we expect, who is, and why are you not making the call? Why is this person the one handling it? Right. That is why I think that response of just, hey, I didn't say it, but we're going to figure it out. That would have been a little better, I think.
Well, Jake, there's two sides to this because you have the Players Association, and then you also have the NFL. So on one hand, you have Roger Goodell. On the other hand, you have DeMaurice Smith or in this case, Troy Vincent. But there's an underlying piece that we're forgetting about. It's the two owners of the two teams that played.
Oh, wow.
And ultimately, they control Roger. So, I mean, could they have said something?
Absolutely.
Quite possibly.
Absolutely. So, no question about that. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would just like to know where it came from if Troy's saying I didn't do it, just so, because whoever said it, it doesn't matter. The end result was the game wasn't played. And the fact that it took Zach Taylor to go over to McDermott and say, let's go back to the locker room because, I can see it's just not the way it should be.
It's not, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the right way to do it, though.
Contingency plan in effect for something like this. And I had a conversation with someone today who brought up Ryan Shazier's injury, when he got hurt and they still finished the game. To me, this is completely different.
It's different, but I get what they were getting at.
You know, and I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, football's always been played. The game's never stopped, but this
There
to
should be
me
plans
was,
in place.
you know, this was a national television game. It's
Yeah.
totally different. All
Yeah,
eyes
you're
are
right.
on this, you know, Hamlin lying there and getting CPR, and you know, the announcers have nothing to say to
You're right.
I don't know. It's just a tough
It-
situation. It's a nightmare scenario
it's-
for the NFL.
It's a nightmare for broadcasters too. But on that note, we got about 50 seconds left, so we'll go around the horn. I'll start with Eric. Where can the people find you, good sir?
Monday and Wednesday night, Sports Arena, 10 p.m. Eastern.
Beautiful. John.
Blue Hawks 13.
Nice and quick. JB.
JB underscore the program tomorrow night. J&J Sports Express 7, South Florida Tribune Sports Exchange at 9. And Jake, go ahead.
You guys can find me on Twitter at Jake_Malik. I haven't done this in a while, so I get to do this, and I'm excited. As you guys can see scrolling across the bottom of the screen, here's where you can find Sideline Sports. Instagram and Twitter is Sideline Sport 1. YouTube is, and Facebook and all those places are just Sideline Sports. Just look up the name. DBTV, we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all that. And on that note, everybody have a good one, and we'll see you next time.